written off before the first shot. June 21st, 1944. 14,000 feet above the Cherbourg Peninsula, Normandy. Cold air leaks through the seams of the cockpit, biting fingers despite thick gloves. The sky ahead is a flat, metallic gray, broken only by scattered cloud layers and the distant shimmer of flak bursts. The aircraft vibrates constantly, not violently, but with a low, stubborn shudder, like something old refusing to fall apart. The engine noise is uneven, a rhythmic thunder that feels closer to a tractor than a fighter, yet it keeps pulling forward. Lieutenant Colonel James H. Parker sits rigid in the left seat, eyes forward, jaw clenched. His aircraft is not supposed to be here. Not today. Not in this kind of war. Below, the Normandy coast crawls with movement. Landing craft still burn along the shoreline. Smoke columns mark where artillery has spoken recently. German positions are dug in tight, invisible until they open fire. Somewhere down there, American infantry are pinned, waiting for air support that may or may not arrive in time. Parker glances at his airspeed, then outside again. His aircraft is slow. Everyone knows it. Slow to climb, slow to accelerate, slow compared to the sleek fighters now filling Allied airfields. Faster machines have replaced it on posters and in procurement meetings. Faster machines are supposed to have made this one obsolete. Yet here it is. Flak bursts snap closer now. Black puffs bloom ahead of the nose, sharp and sudden. The aircraft shudders again, not panicked, just irritated, as if absorbing the shock rather than dodging it. Parker does not yank the controls. He eases the stick, keeping the nose steady, trusting the airframe to do what it has always done. This airplane has been underestimated its entire life. Months earlier, back in England, it was spoken about with a kind of embarrassment. At briefings, officers lowered their voices when its name came up. It was called outdated, a relic of an earlier doctrine. Designed before radar-guided fighters, before dense flak belts, before modern air combat turned speed into survival. Young pilots joked about it. Engineers questioned why it was still being serviced. Some commanders argued it should be pulled entirely from frontline duty. They believed it could not survive modern combat. That belief followed Parker now, riding with him into the flak-filled sky. A sharp metallic clang echoes through the fuselage. The aircraft jolts. A warning light flickers, then steadies. Parker exhales slowly. He has flown this machine long enough to know its sounds, to tell the difference between damage and noise. The aircraft keeps flying, keeps its line, keeps its speed. In the rear, Staff Sergeant Leo Martinez grips his position, eyes scanning downward. He smells oil, cordite, and damp canvas. He hears fragments rattle against the fuselage, feels the aircraft absorb punishment that would have crippled something lighter, faster, more delicate. Martinez does not curse. He trusts the plane. It has brought him home before. Ahead, Parker spots the target area. The smoke pattern matches the briefing map. He banks slightly, lining up for a shallow approach. This is not a screaming dive or a high-speed pass. It is deliberate, almost stubbornly calm. This aircraft was never meant to outrun danger. It was meant to endure it. As they descend, Parker thinks back to the early days of the war, when this machine first flew combat missions. Back then, it was praised for its range, its stability, its ability to carry punishment and still deliver. It was built around a simple idea: stay in the fight longer than the enemy expects. But war has a way of changing the rules. By 1944, enemy fighters were faster. Anti-aircraft guns were more accurate. The sky had become a lethal place for anything that could not outrun, outclimb, or outmaneuver threats. The aircraft Parker flies does none of those things particularly well. What it does have is something the critics forgot to measure. The flak intensifies. Explosions bracket the aircraft now, front and rear. The controls vibrate harder. Martinez shouts a damage report, his voice tight but controlled. Parker acknowledges without turning his head. He keeps the nose steady. Below, American troops look up and see a shape they recognize. Not sleek, not fast, but solid, familiar, still coming. The aircraft lines up on its run. Parker adjusts trim, compensates for damage, and commits. He knows the risk. He knows what the after-action reports will say if this goes wrong. Another outdated plane lost. Another proof that the skeptics were right. But he also knows something else. This aircraft was never designed to win by speed or elegance. It was designed to arrive when others could not stay, to fly through punishment rather than around it, to keep working even after being told it should have failed. The nose steadies. The target fills the windscreen. Parker breathes once, deeply. The aircraft presses forward into fire, into doubt, into a war that no longer believes in it. And it does not turn away. Built for a different war, tested by this one. The aircraft holds its line as the ground rushes closer. Parker releases the ordnance in a smooth, practice motion. The aircraft lurches upward as weight drops away, engine straining briefly before settling back into their familiar rhythm. Below, the impact flashes through smoke and earth. German positions erupt, and the flak stutters, then thins. Infantry advance almost immediately, small figures breaking from cover. But there is no time to watch. The sky answers back. A burst detonates just off the right wing. The shock slams through the fuselage. Warning lights flare. The aircraft dips, then stabilizes. Parker corrects gently, never over-controlling. He has learned the hard way that this airplane responds best to calm hands. Martinez reports shrapnel damage along the wing route. Fuel pressure is fluctuating, but holding. Control surfaces still respond. Parker nods, jaw tight. This is what the aircraft was made for. To be hurt and keep moving. As they turn away from the target, Parker thinks of how wrong everyone had been about this machine from the start. When it was designed, years before the war reached this stage, the planners imagined a different battlefield. One where aircraft stayed longer over the front, where endurance mattered more than raw speed, where pilots needed a stable platform rather than a razor edge. The aircraft was built around thick armor plates, redundant systems, and a structure that could absorb punishment without catastrophic failure. It was not elegant. It was not fast. It was stubborn. Early in the war, that stubbornness made it invaluable. It flew missions others could not sustain. It came back with holes you could crawl through, with control cables shredded and engines coughing, yet still landed its crews alive. Pilots trusted it. Ground crews respected it. Then the war evolved. New fighters arrived, sleeker and faster. High-altitude interceptors dominated headlines. Doctrine shifted. Speed became survival. Anything that could not outrun danger was labeled expendable. This aircraft became a problem in meetings. Reports described it as vulnerable, outdated, too slow for contested airspace. Losses mounted when it was used incorrectly, thrown into roles it was never designed to perform. Each loss reinforced the belief that its time had passed. But those reports missed something critical. They measured survival by avoidance. This aircraft survived by endurance. As Parker banks westward, the engine temperature climbs, then steadies. Oil pressure holds. The airplane feels heavy, wounded but alive. The controls remain honest in his hands. He can feel every gust, every vibration, every complaint from the airframe. It is speaking to him, telling him what it can still give. Enemy fighters appear on the horizon, small dark specks cutting fast arcs through the sky. Parker spots them early. He does not try to outrun them. That would be suicide. Instead, he lowers altitude, staying close to broken cloud layers, forcing the engagement into a place where speed matters less than positioning. Martinez tracks the approaching shapes, muscles tight. He knows the reputation of their attackers. Faster aircraft, deadlier guns. Pilots trained to kill slow targets quickly. The first enemy fighter dives. Tracer fire snaps past the cockpit. The aircraft shudders as rounds strike the fuselage. Parker resists the instinct to jerk the stick. He keeps his turn shallow, predictable only to those who have never flown this airplane under fire. The fighter overshoots. It always does. The attacker misjudges closure rate, expecting the older aircraft to break or panic. Instead, it holds steady, absorbing fire, forcing the faster fighter to commit too early. Martinez fires as the enemy crosses his arc. The fighter peels away, smoke trailing briefly before vanishing in a cloud. Another fighter approaches, more cautious this time. It circles, probing. Parker lets it. He keeps the aircraft stable, presenting a target that looks easy but is not. The thick armor shrugs off glancing hits. Control linkages reroute around damage. Systems fail slowly, not catastrophically. This is where the aircraft reveals its true strength. It does not collapse when wounded. It degrades. The second fighter breaks off after a short pass. It has expended ammunition, gained nothing, and exposed itself to return fire. The sky quiets again, leaving only the roar of the engine and the wind over scarred metal. Parker exhales. His hands ache from tension. Sweat runs down his spine despite the cold. This aircraft should be dead. By every modern measure, it should not have survived that attack. Yet flies on. As they head back toward friendly lines, Parker knows this mission will be written up like many others. Another successful sortie. Another damaged aircraft returned. Another set of numbers added to a ledger. What the ledger will not capture is the growing realization spreading quietly through squadrons like his. That this airplane, written off as obsolete, is surviving where others cannot. Not because it avoids danger, but because it was built to live inside it. Strengths no one measured. The coast slips behind them as the aircraft limps inland toward England. Cloud layers thicken, swallowing the horizon in dull gray. Parker holds altitude by feel more than instruments now. One gauge is dead. Another flickers. The engine note remains steady enough, a rough but reliable growl that refuses to fade. Martinez continues his checks, calling out what still works and what is not. Hydraulics are sluggish. One control cable shows increased resistance. Fuel consumption is higher than planned. None of it is fatal. Not yet. This is the pattern Parker has come to recognize. Modern aircraft fail suddenly. This one fails slowly. As they fly, Parker thinks about how close this aircraft came to being pulled from service entirely. He remembers the meeting months earlier, standing at the back of a briefing room while senior officers debated its future. Charts were projected on the wall. Loss rates, speed comparisons, climb performance. All of them painted the same picture. Outclassed. No one talked about how often it brought crews home. No one talked about how often it completed its mission despite damage that would have forced faster aircraft to abort. No one talked about what happened after it was hit, because those things were harder to quantify. The aircraft design had been shaped by brutal lessons learned early in the war. Engineers had added armor where it mattered, not where it looked good. They had reinforced critical systems, duplicated controls, and accepted weight penalties others avoided. The result was an airplane that did not excel in clean conditions, but thrived in chaos. Its wings could take punishment without shearing. Its fuselage absorbed shock rather than transmitting it violently to the crew. Its systems were accessible, reparable, forgiving. Ground crews loved it for that reason. You could patch it. You could keep it flying. Pilots learned something else. You could trust it. Parker feels a sudden vibration change. He eases the throttle slightly. The aircraft responds, settling into a more comfortable rhythm. He nods to himself. It is listening. Below, the channel is a dull slate, flecked with white caps. The aircraft drifts lower, conserving what it has left. Parker keeps his eyes scanning constantly. Even now, danger is not over. As they cross the water, he remembers other crews who flew this aircraft in worse conditions. Men who had limped back on one engine, with half a wing missing, with control surfaces shot through. Stories that circulated quietly, rarely making it into official reports. Those stories did something important. They changed behavior. Pilots began to adjust how they used the aircraft. They stopped trying to make it something it was not. They stopped forcing it into high-speed interception roles and instead leaned into its strengths. Low to medium altitude, controlled approaches, staying on station longer than anyone expected. They learned how to let enemy fighters overshoot, how to absorb a first pass and punish the second, how to fly wounded rather than panic. This was not doctrine. It was survival knowledge. As the English coast emerges from the haze, Parker feels tension ease slightly. Friendly territory does not mean safety, but it helps. He signals to Martinez, who allows himself a brief grin before returning to his checks. Back at base, mechanics will shake their heads when they see the aircraft. They always do. New holes, bent panels, shrapnel scars layered over old repairs. Someone will mutter that it is a miracle this thing is still flying. But they will also roll it into position and start fixing it, because it always comes back worth fixing. Over the following weeks, missions like Parker's begin to stack up. Not spectacular victories, not clean dogfights, just repeated proof that the aircraft can take punishment and still deliver results. Infantry commanders notice. They request this aircraft specifically. They trust it to stay when others leave. Enemy pilots notice too. They learn that attacking it is not as easy as it looks, that it does not break apart under fire, that it keeps flying even when it should not. Engagements become shorter. Attacks become more cautious. Some avoid it altogether, preferring softer targets. Slowly, quietly, the narrative begins to shift, not in public statements, in behavior. Parker taxis the aircraft onto the airfield, brakes protesting, engine finally winding down. When the propeller stops, silence floods the cockpit. He sits still for a moment, hand resting on the controls, feeling the heat radiate from the panels. This airplane has no right to still be here. And yet again it is. As he climbs out, he looks back at the scarred fuselage. It is not pretty. It will never be fast. It will never be admired the way sleeker machines are. But it has proven something no chart ever showed. That survival in modern combat is not only about speed. It is about resilience. And this aircraft has more of it than anyone ever measured. When reality forced a rethink. The airfield is already busy when Parker walks across the tarmac. Engines roar. Ground crews move with practiced urgency. A damaged aircraft is nothing unusual here. But Parker's draws longer looks than most. The wing is peppered with holes. The fuselage bears fresh scars, blackened and torn. Oil streaks trail back from the cowling like dry blood. A maintenance officer runs a hand along the metal, shaking his head. This should have been fatal. Inside the operations hut, the debrief begins the same way it always does. Time over target. Enemy fire. Fighter contact. Damage sustained. Parker answers calmly, precisely, resisting the urge to editorialize. He sticks to facts. But the facts are becoming harder to ignore. The aircraft completed its mission. It stayed on station under fire. It survived fighter attack. It returned with its crew intact. Again, the intelligence officer notes the pattern. He has been seeing it for weeks now, not just from Parker's unit, but from others flying the same aircraft. Sortie after sortie shows the same outcome. High damage, high exposure, high survival. In the corner of the room, a senior officer listens without interrupting. He has argued against this aircraft before. He has signed off on memos recommending its gradual withdrawal. He has quoted speed figures and loss ratios. Now he watches the board fill with chalk marks that do not fit his expectations. Outside, the mechanics work. Panels come off. Shrapnel is pulled free. Control lines are inspected and adjusted. They speak quietly as they work, already planning how to return the aircraft to service. No one asks if it will fly again. Only when. Word spreads fast in wartime units. Pilots from other squadrons wander over, pretending to be curious about the damage. They ask Parker questions that sound casual, but are not. How did it handle after the hit? Did the controls stiffen? How close did the fighters get? Parker answers honestly. He does not boast. He does not sell the aircraft. He simply describes what it did. Those conversations matter more than any report. In the weeks that follow, tactical adjustments begin to appear. Quiet ones. The aircraft is assigned missions that play to its strengths. Close support. Interdiction in heavily defended areas. Roles where endurance and damage tolerance matter more than speed. The results are immediate. Loss rates stabilize. Mission completion improves. Crews gain confidence. The aircraft stops being treated like a liability and starts being used like a tool. Enemy response shifts as well. German flak units increase fire against it, recognizing the threat it poses to ground operations. Fighter pilots adapt their attack profiles, staying higher, making fewer passes. Some simply disengage, unwilling to waste time and ammunition on an aircraft that refuses to die. This is not because the aircraft suddenly became superior. It is because the battlefield finally revealed what it had always been good at. By late summer, planners are forced to revise their assumptions. Not publicly, not with fanfare, but in the language that matters most. Tasking orders, resource allocation, spare parts distribution. The aircraft stays. Parker notices the change in atmosphere. Jokes stop. Skepticism fades. Younger pilots listen more closely when veterans talk about how to fly it. The airplane's reputation shifts from embarrassment to odd respect. It is still called old, but now it is called reliable. On another mission, weeks later, Parker flies again over contested ground. The flak is just as heavy, the risk just as real, but he feels something new as he lines up on the target. Validation. Not personal, structural. This aircraft was not a mistake. It was a different answer to the same problem. While others chased speed, it invested in survival. While doctrine evolved away from it, reality pulled back. The bombs fall. The aircraft absorbs fire. It comes home. Again, standing beside it on the tarmac afterward, Parker realizes something that would have seemed unthinkable months ago. This airplane, written off as unable to survive modern combat, is shaping how that combat is fought. Not by being the best, but by refusing to fail. Proving survival is a weapon. August 14th, 1944. Late afternoon, 9,000 feet over northern France. The light is different now. Summer sun cuts through broken clouds, turning smoke into long golden streaks across the battlefield. The front has moved east. The war is changing again, just as it always does. Parker flies low, lower than most would dare. The aircraft feels heavy with scars and experience. Its surface is patched and repainted so many times the original finish barely shows. The engine hums steadily, almost comfortably, as if this environment no longer surprises it. Below, enemy movement scatters along roads and hedgerows. The mission is simple in wording and dangerous in reality. Disrupt a retreat. Stay long enough to matter. Flak rises immediately. Parker does not flinch. He adjusts, holds steady, lets the aircraft do what it has always done. Explosions hammer the air around them. Fragments strike metal. The fuselage shudders, but the controls remain true. Martinez calls out hits. Parker acknowledges. They are a team, but so is the aircraft. It absorbs, compensates, endures. Enemy fighters appear again, late this time. They hesitate. They circle. They probe from a distance, wary of committing. They have learned what happens when they misjudge this airplane. One dives anyway. The pass is fast and violent. Tracers rake across the wings. Something ruptures. A warning light flashes, then stabilizes. Parker keeps the aircraft straight, denying the attacker the chaos it wants. Martinez fires. The fighter breaks away, empty-handed. No second pass comes. The fighters disappear into the sun. Parker completes the run. He stays longer than planned, longer than anyone expects. Below, enemy units break formation, scattering under pressure. The mission succeeds not because of speed or surprise, but because the aircraft remains present. Survival becomes pressure. On the return flight, Parker reflects on how close this aircraft came to being erased from the war. How easily a different set of assumptions could have written it out of history. How many crews owe their lives to the fact that it was allowed to keep flying? Back at base, the landing is rough but controlled. The aircraft rolls to a stop, battered but alive. Ground crews approach with familiarity now, not disbelief. They know what they are seeing. This is not an anomaly. This is a pattern. In the months that follow, the aircraft continues to fly. Not forever, not unchanged, but long enough to prove its point. Long enough to influence design philosophy, to remind planners that combat is not fought in ideal conditions. Speed matters, but so does the ability to be hit and keep going. Long after the war, this aircraft will be remembered differently than its critics expected. Not as a relic, but as a lesson. That modern combat does not always reward what looks best on paper. That resilience can outlast innovation when innovation forgets reality. On that August afternoon, Parker climbs down from the cockpit one last time and looks back at the machine. It is quiet now, cooling metal ticking softly in the air. They believe it could not survive modern combat. It did, because it was never trying to be modern. It was trying to be alive.